Sold to the Alpha King. Chapter 15. Alara pressed a trembling hand to her chest, standing by the fortress's great doors where she had received Orith's ominous message mere moments ago. Beneath the torchlit arches, the cold night air clung to every breath, and she sensed the tightening coil of tension in the people around her. Warriors patrolled the courtyard in pairs, scanning every shadow for hidden threats. A pair of guards carefully sealed the main doors, while two more double-checked the bolts and iron bars across the lesser entrances. The entire fortress felt on edge, as if the very stones had become wary of an unseen enemy lurking just beyond their perimeter. Ezra stood a step behind Alara, his presence steady and close. She could feel his watchful gaze sweeping over the courtyard, making sure no other hidden surprises awaited them. His posture was upright and regal, long dark hair shifting with each subtle move, and a faint streak of silver glinted at his temple, a mark of the power he had been gathering since their mate bond deepened. He inhaled slowly, then exhaled a measured breath that did nothing to hide the tension edging his features. When their eyes met, she saw an undercurrent of concern that mirrored her own. Lucas and Damien approached with quick, purposeful strides, each pausing for a respectful nod to Ezra before addressing them both. "We've pulled all available warriors to the inner walls, Alpha," Damien reported, voice low but urgent. "Patrols will rotate every 2 hours, no less." Lucas, arms folded, added, "We're posting additional guards at each storeroom entrance and each tower. If Orith or any of his agents try slipping in under cover of darkness, they'll find an unwelcome reception." Ezra nodded, crossing his arms in thought. "Good. The last thing we need is another infiltration like we had before. Keep your eyes open for anything unusual. Magical residue, strange marks, runic symbols. We can't afford even a small slip." His gaze flicked to Alara, softening at once. "And above all, keep Alara's safety a priority." Alara felt a pang of guilt that so many resources were directed to protecting her. She forced down her reluctance and spoke up. "We can't let them see me as a weakness. I'm as much a fighter here as anyone. I'll do what's needed to keep the fortress safe." She placed a hand lightly on Ezra's arm, adding softly, "I won't hide, but I appreciate the precautions." Ezra's jaw tightened, his eyes revealing a mix of relief and anxiety. She knew he was torn between supporting her determination and shielding her from every danger. Finally, he exhaled. "Damien, Lucas, carry on. Alara and I need to meet with Eamon. We have wards to strengthen." Damien inclined his head. "Consider it done, Alpha." He and Lucas bowed and headed off to direct more warriors, leaving Ezra and Alara to continue into the fortress's torchlit interior. The corridors felt both familiar and alien tonight. The same stone walls and flickering sconces, but haunted now by echoes of footsteps and a heightened sense of watchfulness. Alara's heartbeat thrummed with each step, aware of how the message from Orith had changed the fortress's atmosphere entirely. They found Eamon waiting in a small chamber near the library. He stood, cane in hand, scanning through a stack of old scrolls with a profound worry etched into his face. The tension eased slightly when he saw Alara and Ezra. Eamon offered a polite bow, then motioned for them to sit around a narrow wooden table. "I've been studying every text I can recall regarding runic infiltration and mind manipulation," Eamon said, voice hushed. "But the name Orith, it's eluded me so far. Whoever he is, his magic is potent enough to tamper with minds from a distance. That's no simple feat." Alara shared a glance with Ezra. "We can't wait until we find the perfect reference in your scrolls. We have to prepare in other ways," she said, scanning the piles of parchments for any snippet that might hold the key to Orith's identity. Ezra tapped a finger on the table. "Damien and Lucas are reinforcing patrols, but we need more. I want wards around Alara's chambers, wards around the fortress gates, and everyone kept on high alert. Do we have enough magical resources for that?" Eamon nodded gravely. "We do, but it will take time. I'll need Alara's help to anchor some of the spells. The fortress has grown accustomed to standard protective wards for mundane threats, not advanced sorcery that might slip between cracks of our defenses." Alara squared her shoulders, meeting Eamon's gaze. "Tell me how I can help." I'm ready. Ezra rested a hand gently on her shoulder. Let's not push you too far. You've already been through a storm of visions and used a lot of magic. Take breaks when you need them. She reached up, giving his fingers a light squeeze. I will. Thank you. The warmth in her chest flared with love for him, but also a sense of responsibility that outweighed her fatigue. They spent the next hour discussing protective wards with Aemon, detailing the runic designs that could form a defensive network around the key points of the fortress: the gates, the council chamber, the training yard, and Alara's own quarters. Alara absorbed each instruction, determined to push aside her fears in service to their safety. She was no longer the timid outsider who had arrived here uncertain of her place. She was the Alpha's mate, an integral part of the fortress's very lifeblood. Eventually, Aemon dismissed them, cautioning Alara to rest before dawn, when they would begin inscribing and activating the wards. Ezra escorted her along a quiet corridor that led to their shared chambers. They walked in silence for a while, footsteps echoing on cold stone. When they reached the heavy wooden door leading to their rooms, Alara let out a weary sigh and pressed her forehead to it before opening. Ezra waited patiently, the presence at her back reassuring and tender. The moment they stepped inside, she felt the tension in her muscles begin to unwind. A single oil lamp burned on the side table, casting a gentle glow over the familiar furnishings. She sank onto the edge of the bed, head hanging. Ezra followed, settling beside her. He placed a comforting arm around her waist. You've done so much already, he said quietly. I hate seeing you like this, drained by all these threats, but I know you won't stand aside and I wouldn't want you to. It's just, sometimes I wish I could shoulder more of it for you. She glanced up, touched by his admission. She read the conflicted swirl of protectiveness and pride in his eyes. We share the burdens, she replied. That's what our bond is about, right? You told me that before. He nodded, exhaling. I did, and I mean it. Just let me know when to step in. I can't lose you to exhaustion or Orith's manipulations. Alara mustered a faint smile. If I push too far, you'll see it through the bond. I can't hide from you anyway. She tried to inject a note of lightness into her voice, but her chest remained tight with worry. He cupped her chin, leaning in to press a soft kiss to her lips. The contact was brief but electrifying, a gentle reassurance that whatever storms loomed, they faced it together. She felt a hush settle in her, an acceptance that, for this moment at least, she could find solace in his presence. He pulled back slowly, eyes scanning her face. Sleep if you can. I'll stay close. She nodded, though she couldn't ignore the knot of anxiety that twisted her insides. Lying down, she let him extinguish the lamp, then joined her. They both faced each other in the darkness, the only glow coming from the faint moonlight filtering through the curtains. She closed her eyes, letting the steady beat of his heart lull her. Slowly, her mind drifted, though a subtle, unwelcome tension curled at the edge of her consciousness. She dreamed of dark corridors lined with flickering torches, of distant chanting that set her nerves on edge, then a flicker of a face, vaguely familiar, yet she couldn't name it. The figure's eyes gleamed pale green, swirling with arcane secrets. She caught glimpses of runes carved into stone, each mark pulsing with an eerie light, culminating in a single name, Orith, written in spidery script upon a tattered family record. She jerked awake with a gasp, heart lurching as reality swept in. Ezra, roused by her sudden movement, brushed his hand down her arm. Alara? He whispered, voice thick from half-sleep. Another dream? She nodded shakily. I saw a face. It's not someone I recognize, but it felt connected to me. And Orith's name was there too. She shivered, clinging to the sense of the dream's leftover dread. I'm tired of these nightmares. I feel like each one is pushing me toward a truth I'm not ready to face. Ezra propped himself on one elbow, offering her a concerned look. Tell me everything. She did, recounting each detail even though the edges of the dream were already fading. He listened intently, weaving gentle reassurances into the conversation. She found herself leaning against him, the warmth of his body anchoring her in the present. Despite her initial reluctance to reveal these private fears, she realized how much it helped to speak them aloud. The tension in her shoulders eased as he stroked her hair, letting her words fill the quiet darkness. "You trust me with your burdens," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I should trust you with mine." He pressed a light kiss to her forehead. "I want every part of you, Alara. The good, the worry, the fear, the strength. That's what it means to be mates." Her eyes prickled, but no tears fell. She just felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. "Thank you," she murmured. "Without you, this would be so much heavier." They drifted into a somewhat calmer sleep, lulled by their closeness. Dawn arrived too soon, bringing with it a swirl of activity in the fortress. After a quick meal, Alara and Ezra joined Eamon in the courtyard, along with Damien and Lucas to begin the warding process. Alara had never attempted something this large-scale, weaving magic not just for a localized defense, but for a series of runic glyphs that would interlock around the fortress's perimeter. She stood near the main gate, hands trembling slightly as Eamon drew arcs in the air with a faintly glowing wand. He chanted under his breath, then nodded at her. She focused, calling to mind the well of magic within. Asina's presence rippled through her, offering guidance. She extended a hand, letting a golden shimmer radiate from her palm. It lanced onto the ground, forming a delicate pattern that met Eamon's arcs halfway. The lines fused with a brief flash, then settled into a faintly pulsing script. Each flicker of light felt like a jolt in her chest, but she gritted her teeth and held steady. Ezra watched from a short distance, arms folded, expression one of measured awe. She remembered a time when such a display would have terrified her. Now she embraced the challenge. Eamon guided her through each stage, and slowly, they formed the first of many wards. Damien, Lucas, and a handful of warriors guarded them from any interruption, scanning the open gate for movement. When the final swirl of magic anchored itself into the courtyard flagstones, Eamon let out a relieved sigh. "That's the first ward placed," he said, proud but cautious. "We'll replicate it around the fortress. If Orith tries to slip more runes inside or mount a direct assault, these wards should either repel or at least signal us." Alara swayed, fighting a wave of dizziness. A gentle hand caught her elbow, and she glanced over to see Ezra at her side. "Take a breath," he murmured. "You're pushing yourself." She nodded, blinking as the cobblestones seemed to sway in her vision. "It's just a bit draining. I'll be fine." She realized her voice sounded more confident than the swirling feeling in her gut. Taking a moment to steady her breathing, she saw pride on Eamon's face and respect in the eyes of the nearby warriors. She felt a spark of satisfaction that overshadowed her exhaustion. Ezra guided her to a small bench in the courtyard's corner for a brief rest. While Eamon conferred with Damien about the next ward location, Alara leaned her head on Ezra's shoulder, letting him press a cool canteen of water to her lips. "You're doing incredible," he said softly, brushing a stray lock of hair from her cheek. She forced a wry grin. "Sure doesn't feel that way sometimes, but I won't stop." She took a sip of water, letting it soothe her dry throat. They shared a smile that felt more intimate than 1,000 spoken words. Partway through the morning, a lookout from the fortress tower called down that a rider approached under a banner of an allied pack. Ezra and Alara went to greet the messenger with measured curiosity and apprehension. A tall, rangy woman dismounted, face drawn from long travel. She offered a respectful bow before addressing them. "I come from the Silvercrest pack," she said, voice firm. "We have heard rumors of a sorcerer named Orith, wreaking havoc across neighboring lands, employing illusions and curses to sow discord. Our Alpha sends word that sightings of strange runic devices and manipulated individuals have increased. I was told to warn you specifically. He believed you might be a major target." Ezra's gaze flicked to Alara, tension rippling across his jaw. "Thank you for delivering the news. Tell your Alpha we remain vigilant. If Orith's influence is spreading, we'll need to coordinate a response." The messenger nodded. "We stand ready to aid if needed." She glanced at Alara with a trace of curiosity and respect, perhaps having heard rumors of the fortress's formidable mate bond. Alara gave a small, polite dip of her head in return, her mind racing at the confirmation that Orith's shadow spread beyond these walls. When the messenger departed, anxiety weighed on Alara's chest. It seemed every step forward was met with news that Orith's net was casting wider. She confided her fears to Ezra in a low murmur. "How long before he tries an even bigger move against us?" Ezra took her hand, voice steeled. "We'll be ready. At least we now know we aren't alone in suspecting him." As the day wore on, Alara continued her advanced training under Amon's watchful eye. They retreated to a secluded area of the fortress yard, where she practiced forging illusions that might cloak a small group of warriors or mask an entryway. Each successful attempt left her breathless, but it also stoked her confidence. She had never imagined she could bend light and shape subtle illusions with such precision. Amon praised her progress, though he urged caution. "Never forget that illusions can be turned on the caster if you lose focus," he cautioned, reminiscent of a teacher with a favored but ambitious student. Ezra lingered at the edge of the training ground, offering a word of encouragement each time she pulled off a particularly difficult spell. She noticed how his hair gleamed with more silver strands than before, as though each magical milestone they reached together further fueled his alpha power. At one point, she created a swirling shield of gold that deflected a magical bolt from Amon, and she saw a flicker of pride in Ezra's smile that warmed her through. Early in the afternoon, Alara heard raised voices echo from the fortress interior. She and Ezra rushed inside, discovering that a group of suspicious figures, once loyal warriors, had been discovered near a lesser-used storeroom. Some had runic tattoos hidden beneath their uniform sleeves. A fierce confrontation had erupted, with Damien, Lucas, and half a dozen guards locking the corridor down. By the time Alara and Ezra arrived, spells and steel were clashing, the hallway full of shouting and the acrid scent of burned cloth where minor magical attacks singed the stone. Damien barked orders, holding off two manipulated warriors who swung swords with vacant expressions. Lucas pinned another to the wall, struggling to disarm him without causing lethal harm. Alara wasted no time. Summoning the growing reservoir of magic within, she wove a protective barrier that shimmered across the corridor, preventing the manipulated men from fleeing deeper into the fortress. With a trembling hand, she reached out a pulse that forced them backward, unsteadying their feet enough for the guards to seize control. The fight ended in a flurry of cursing and frantic attempts by the enthralled warriors to break free. Damien snatched a blade from one man's limp grasp, while Lucas cuffed another's wrists. Alara took a shallow breath, focusing on reading the magical residue clinging to them. She detected the same dark signature as before, a faint echo of Orith's orchestrating influence. Her stomach twisted. Ezra strode down the corridor, face grim. He halted next to Lucas. "Who are they?" Lucas caught his breath. "Warriors from the outer perimeter, Bran, Dorian, and the twins from last year's recruits. They all served loyally, but now they fight as if possessed." Alara swallowed. "Let's bind them safely and try to break the enchantment. We can't lose more people to Orith's manipulations." Damien gave a terse nod. "Already done, we'll lock them in a warded cell. Amon can attempt a cleansing spell if you're willing to assist." Ezra's expression hardened. "Yes, do that, we need answers." He glanced at Alara, flickers of anger and fear dancing in his eyes. She recognized the silent vow beneath that look. He would not let Orith claim more loyal souls, not if they could help it. Once the corridor was secured, Alara assisted Amon in a makeshift cleansing ritual, carefully unraveling traces of the enthrallment from the subdued warriors. It was exhausting work, each spell requiring delicate precision. But by the end, the men's eyes cleared, confusion and guilt flooding their faces. One tried to stammer apologies, but he had no memory of crossing a line from loyalty to betrayal. A smoldering fury kindled in Alara's chest. How many more would Orith puppet like this? How many more illusions or manipulations were waiting, coiled in the corners of their fortress? She caught Ezra's gaze across the warded cell. His jaw was clenched, the line of his shoulders rigid. He felt the same anger she did, the same burning need to uproot this malign force. A captured enemy fighter, also enthralled, offered a garbled warning, while still half-conscious from the cleansing. He's not done. Orith grows stronger. The time is close. He wants her. The man's eyes turned to Alara, brimming with terrified awe. She is the key. Those few words sent a chill through every occupant of the cell. Alara's heart hammered. This was no idle threat. If Orith believed she was a key to some greater plan, it meant the final confrontation was nearer than any of them expected. She shivered, feeling Ezra's hand slip into hers, giving a reassuring squeeze. Back in a quiet antechamber, Alara recounted what she'd sensed from the enthralled men. She described the echoes of Orith's magic that felt intimately linked to her own aura, as though he specifically sought to exploit something inherent in her bloodline. Aemon, standing with his walking stick braced under both hands, frowned deeply. "It might be time to consider your lineage more closely," he said gently. "Sometimes these sorcerers target ancient bloodlines for their potency. Have you any notion of your ancestry, Alara? Parents, grandparents who might have harbored magical gifts or ties to an old foe?" Alara looked down, ashamed at how little she knew. "I was orphaned young. My father died. My mother had a small gift for herbal remedies, but she never claimed magical lineage. Or if she did, I never knew it. Growing up, I had no idea I was capable of anything like this." Ezra's voice cut in, firm yet compassionate. "We shouldn't blame ourselves for what we didn't know. But if Orith has ties to your family, we'll uncover it. This fortress holds plenty of genealogical records. The elders can help us search." She nodded, gratitude warming her chest even as worry gnawed at her nerves. A new sense of personal stakes hung before her. Orith might be more than a random foe. He could be a twisted figure from her past, or someone who had harnessed her family's magic for vile ends. Her mind spun with unanswered questions, but the support she felt from Ezra, from Aemon, from her friends, fueled her resolve. That evening, with the fortress still reeling from the infiltration attempt, Alara and Ezra gathered with Damien, Lucas, Aemon, and several elders in a private hall. By lamplight, they discussed how best to strike back, or at least flush Orith or his agents into the open. Alara listened to the debate swirl around her. Some elders worried that using Alara as bait was reckless. Others insisted it might be the only way to corner Orith's forces. Damien and Lucas favored a strategic trap, carefully controlling every variable so that Orith's attempt to capture Alara would fail dramatically. Ezra sat at the head of the table, exuding quiet authority. His eyes flicked toward Alara, and she felt his tension through their bond. "I'm not fond of risking her," he said, voice controlled. "But Alara's proven she can handle more than we realize. If we do this, it must be meticulously planned. Wards, hidden warriors, contingency spells." Alara took a breath, setting her shoulders. "I'm prepared," she said, letting her gaze sweep over the elders. "I'd rather face him on our terms than wait for his illusions and thralls to pick us off one by one." She felt a flicker of her old shyness, but pushed through it with unwavering conviction. "You all know me by now. If there's a chance to stop Orith once and for all, I'll take it." Her words stirred a mix of admiration and nervousness in the room. One elder, who had once doubted her skill, now inclined his head, grudging respect in his voice. "We stand behind you, Luna," he said, using the title that signified her as Ezra's mate and partner in leadership. The mention sent a subtle warmth through Alara's chest. In a swirl of tense, pragmatic dialogue, they devised the skeleton of a plan. Alara would feign vulnerability, drawing Orith's minions to a specific location near the fortress's outer walls. Meanwhile, hidden warrior squads would lie in wait, and Aemon would anchor protective wards so that if Orith tried to replicate the enthrallment or illusions, his magic would be abruptly snared. Ezra scowled at the thought of Alara placing herself in such direct peril, but she caught his eye, silently conveying that it was a burden she was ready to shoulder. Eventually, with a resigned nod, he consented. "If Alara's determined, I won't undermine her," he said, turning to face her fully. "But I'll be close. The moment anything goes wrong, I'm coming for you. Understood?" She managed a small smile, touched by the fierce protectiveness in his voice. "I wouldn't expect anything less." At the meeting's conclusion, the elders, warriors, and Aemon dispersed to finalize details. Damien and Lucas each clasped Alara's hand briefly, offering words of encouragement. They parted ways in the corridor, leaving her alone with Ezra. His shoulders looked heavy with worry, but he forced a lighter tone when he turned to her. "You're braver than I ever imagined," he said softly. "When we first met, you were so uncertain about everything. Us, your powers, your place here. Now you stand before elders and propose we trap a rogue sorcerer." She met his gaze, feeling a mingling of pride and lingering nerves. "I had help," she replied. "From you. From everyone." He stepped closer, placing a hand on her cheek, voice lowering. "Let's take a moment for ourselves. We don't know how soon Orith might strike once he hears of your so-called vulnerability. We might not get many peaceful nights before then." His touch set her heart to a new tempo. "Yes," she whispered, voice threading with relief. "I'd like that." They retreated to their chambers, the flicker of a single candle illuminating the space. Alara closed the door, leaning against it for a moment as she watched Ezra set aside his sword and remove the thick leather bracers he wore for the day's tension. Her gaze clung to the silver strands in his hair, symbols of how his power had grown in tandem with their bond. She recalled how, not long ago, she blushed whenever their eyes met. Yet now she didn't hesitate to cross the room and slip her arms around his waist. He inhaled softly, resting his hands at her hips. "Alara," he said, a breathy undertone in his voice. "Thank you for not letting me bury you in overprotection. I realize you deserve your own agency." She leaned her head on his chest, listening to the strong beat of his heart. "I know you do it because you care, but I have to stand on my own too. It means so much that you trust me." He pressed his lips to the top of her hair. "I do. I trust you more than I trust myself some days." She felt a surge of affection, and, bolstered by her growing confidence, she lifted her chin and kissed him with gentle insistence. He responded, making a low sound of contentment as he let the tension in his body unravel. The candlelight danced off the walls, and she allowed herself to be swept into the warmth of his embrace. After the day's chaos, visions, infiltration attempts, planning a risky trap, this single moment of closeness felt like life's sweetest reprieve. Their kiss lingered, unhurried yet filled with a tenderness that banished the fortress's turmoil. Her hands slid up to his shoulders, fingers grazing the boundary between shirt and skin. She remembered the first time they shared such intimacy, how shy she had been. Now she embraced it wholeheartedly, a testament to how far she had come. He responded with equal passion, cradling her face, tracing his thumb across her cheek as though memorizing her features. They parted, breath mingling, gazes locked in a silent exchange of longing and comfort. Ezra's cheeks carried a faint flush, and a small smile touched his lips. "Sometimes I forget we're in the middle of a war," he said softly. "When I have you in my arms." She managed a quiet laugh. "Me too. But if it weren't for these moments, I'm not sure I could keep going." He brushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "Then we'll hold on to them as tight as we can." Another soft kiss, more reassuring than the last, sealed the sentiment. She melted into him, letting the day's heaviness drain away, if only briefly. Eventually they settled beside each other, sinking onto the bed's edge. She murmured about her nightmares, about the repeated glimpses of Orith's face, unformed but present in her mind's eye. He listened, thumb stroking the back of her hand in slow circles. Their conversation wove between worries about the plan to lure Orith into a confrontation and the personal stakes if Orith truly had ties to her lineage. The night grew late, but neither hurried to sleep, drawn to the solace found in each other's voices. Before exhaustion claimed them, they prepared for bed, each reflecting on how fleeting these moments might be if Orith's threat escalated. She felt a pang of sadness that overshadowed her desire to rest. Still, the anchor of Ezra's presence, his unwavering confidence in her, kept her from dwelling too long on the worst possibilities. They lay down, arms loosely entwined, and she drifted toward slumber with his heartbeat in her ear. Sometime after midnight, a chill rippled through her. She stirred, eyes snapping open to a sensation of something dark, prodding at her consciousness. The fortress's torches had long since burned low. The chamber lay in deep shadow, but from the corner a faint shimmer flickered, ephemeral as a candle flame about to gutter out. Her pulse hammered. She carefully untangled herself from Ezra's arms, mind bristling with alarm. Asena stirred, alert and protective. She rose quietly, stepping onto the cold floor, eyes fixed on the phantom glimmer near the chamber's door. She thought she heard a whisper, her name barely audible and so full of malice that it set her teeth on edge. A sense of Orith's presence flooded her senses, echoing with the same vile resonance she'd felt in her nightmares. She stood, paralyzed, as though a hand of spectral frost brushed across her arms. Another hush-soft whisper came, forming something like a mocking laugh. Alara swallowed, fear clawing her throat, but forced herself to speak. "Orith, you won't win," she whispered, voice trembling but resolute. "This fortress stands against you." The phantom shimmer wavered, an image half-formed as if peering through a portal. For a single heartbeat, she glimpsed eyes, vague, grayish shapes full of cold intelligence, before the vision collapsed inward and vanished entirely. Her legs threatened to buckle, but she steadied herself, adrenaline coursing through her. Behind her, Ezra shifted awake, apparently alerted by her movement or the bond's surge of dread. He sat up, hair falling into his eyes, scanning the chamber for threats. "Alara," he murmured, voice rough with concern. She turned, breathing heavily. "He was here, right? Or part of him." Orith tried to reach out again. "I felt it." Ezra jumped to his feet, crossing the room in 2 strides. "Are you hurt?" He glanced around, checking for any sign of intrusion. She shook her head. "No, it vanished. But it was stronger than the illusions we've seen before. Maybe he's testing the wards, seeing how close he can get to me even inside these walls." Ezra grimaced, jaw clenched. "I won't let him keep tormenting you." He gathered her into his arms. Though the tension in his muscles felt like coiled steel, she let herself lean into his warmth, grateful for his steadiness. "I can sense how shaken you are," he murmured, pressing a comforting hand to the small of her back. She closed her eyes for a moment. I'm just angry now. More than afraid. He wants to break us, but he's only making me more certain I'll fight him." He pulled back, meeting her gaze with equal resolve. "We have our plan, and tomorrow, we'll set it in motion. If Orith is foolish enough to come for you, we'll be ready." She nodded, the closeness of his presence fortifying her. Their bond pulsed, a current of shared determination. They both understood that the confrontation they had been dreading, yet preparing for, was nearly upon them. Every step had led them here to this climactic struggle that would decide the fortress's fate and perhaps unravel the mysteries of Alara's lineage. "We face it together," she whispered, echoing their constant mantra, her voice carrying all the devotion, fear, and hope pent up inside her. "Always," he whispered in return, brow resting against hers. In that silent exchange they bound themselves once more to stand unbreakably united against the darkness swirling at their gates.